EP Magazine's annual healthcare issue contains a wide selection of articles for parents, caretakers, and professionals who care for children and youth with special healthcare needs, including families who have multiple children with disabilities. Further topics include early intervention, oral care, medical bills, and physical fitness, concerns faced by most families, but especially challenging to those with special needs. Read it today at www.epmagazine.com.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of REITs Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, Two Lives at Once. And with every REIT you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. Two Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, two lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to REITsAcrossAmerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help. That's REITsAcrossAmerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
Suicide is preventable, and each of us has a role to play in suicide prevention.
Suicide is complex. There is no single cause.
And it's not always a mental health issue. It could be loss of a job or home, financial or relationship issues, pain, or leaving the military.
Suicide does not discriminate. It affects all ages, races, and genders, veterans or not.
If you know a veteran who is struggling, connect with them. Let them know help is available.
There is quick and easy access to services in times of crisis.
Dial 988, then press 1. Talking about it is okay.
Don't keep it inside. Don't be ashamed. Don't wait. Reach out.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Hello and welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio. My name is Travis. I am your host. Oscar Mike Radio is part of the Hubuzoo Network. You can find out more on hubuzoo.com. I want to thank my sponsors, Joyce Asek of Asek Real Estate, Mark Holmes, Army National Guard veteran and the owner of Reapers Detailing and Power Washing, and my supporters, Kaufmann Shaving Company, Black Cat Designs, and Exceptional Parent Magazine. So 2024 is off to a fast start. We're almost in the quarter one, and it's always good to talk to another veteran podcaster, and this man almost needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. Richard Kaufman, the Vertical Momentum Podcast. Welcome to Oscar Mike Radio.
Thank you so much for having me on. And by the way, I love Kaufmann Shaving. I use it all the time. Awesome dude, awesome owner. Love the products.
What's your favorite soap?
I kind of like them all. I'm a big soap guy, so I kind of like everything that they put out. They don't put out a bad product.
No.
So I try everything. I as soon as a new product comes out, I'm the first one to get it. I love all their products.
Very good, very good. So you're another veteran. You're another veteran podcaster. We're kind of like rarities in the podcast world. There's not very many of us out there. Richard, when you think about, what's comprises a podcast, like there's millions of sports podcasts and true crime podcasts, but there's very few veteran podcasts. Before we get into all the good stuff with yours and what you did with it, why don't you give me a little sample of who you were. I mean, you're a veteran, you served in the military, you served in the Army. So let's start around that time, how you got into the military and what you did.
Well, I tell everybody I was the worst soldier you've ever seen. I was the ultimate shitbag. I have 8 Article 15s to my name, 2 field grade Article 15s. But then after 9/11, after it turned my life around, I became the best of the best, winning Soldier of the Year, a non-commissioned officer, and all that. So we can get into all of that. But I call myself a junkie who got lucky. I'm just a guy that went from dope dealer to hope dealer. I spent 23 years in the military, on and off with National Guard and regular Army. Got in the first time, 86 to 88, became a drug addict, alcoholic, got thrown out for being an addict and alcoholic. Got back in 90, and then I got medically discharged in 2012 after I got hurt and lost 80% of my vision. And that's when I attempted suicide, Labor Day 2012. And that's when I started thinking about getting into podcasting. And then a chance meeting with a gentleman that we know, Mr. Gary Vaynerchuk. He actually got me started writing my book, my podcast. So if it wasn't for Gary, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And now we're in the top, I think, 0.5% of all podcasts in the world. And it's all because of people like yourself, people like John Lee Dumas that have been on the show, Steve Sims, and all those guys. It's not me. It's all those guys. I give them all the credit. General Petraeus came on the show, so I give all those guys credit. I'm just a guy asking questions.
Sure, sure. What did you do in the Army?
Well, when I first got in, I joined as a 19 kilo, which was a tanker. And then I became eventually, after I got my shit straight, I became a tank commander. And then once I got my stuff straight, I volunteered for everything. So they're like, all right, Kaufman, we want to send you to school. Okay. So I reclassed 19 Delta. I reclassed 11 Bravo. I was the PP checker. I did whatever the military told me to do to become the ultimate soldier. So I got 3 MOSs, which I think it's pretty rare that somebody has 3 MOSs, but I just volunteered for everything. I'm like, you want to send me to school? I'm good with that. Let's go. Where are you going to send me?
Right, right. Getting out was very, in your own words, traumatic. It was a heavy duty time for you and not very easy. Go into that for me, because, some people think, it's easy to get out and just start over and do that. But you had other circumstances that made it really challenging, more so than it already is.
Well, for me, like I said, I got thrown out for being an addict. Got back in, was about to be thrown out again at the end of September of 2001. If it wasn't for 9/11, that's what saved my bacon. But after 9/48 of September 11, 2001, I wasn't the same person. So that's when I turned my whole career around. And like I said, within 3 years, I went from being EIOU1, to E5 promotable, Soldier of the Year, and all that stuff. But then when I got hurt, well, because whenever we were in the military, if we ever got pulled over, if anybody asked for ID, we never showed our driver's license. It was always, Sergeant Kaufman, our Army. And then when the Labor Day 2012, when they told me, well, you're no longer Sergeant Kaufman. Well, I just spent the last 20 years building up Sergeant Kaufman, doing everything I can to become the ultimate soldier. And then you take my ID and say, you're no longer Sergeant Kaufman. Well, who am I now? Who's Richard? I don't know who Richard is, because there is no Richard. Everything was being Sergeant Kaufman. And I've had over, I think, 1,100 interviews, and we all struggle with that last day. We all struggle, whether you're a police officer, firefighter, athlete, we all have a shelf life, but you don't think about the shelf life until it's over. And then, no matter, like I said, no matter if you're a Hall of Fame football player, or if you did 2 years, once you hang up that uniform, it's kind of like, now what? what do I do? If I'm not Sergeant Kaufman, I'm 43 years old. What do I do now? I have nothing else to fall back on. And that was a really rough time for me because I didn't know how to reimagine or reinvent myself especially when you're trying to reinvent yourself at age 40, 43. It's not an easy thing.
What started the process of reinventing yourself? Was it just getting out, or was it truly meeting Gary Vaynerchuk? Because he'll never know it probably, but he had a profound impact on what I do and how, you know, my approach changed to podcasting when I was first starting out. So was it that? Was it just finding podcasting as a way to embrace resiliency? You know, what got you on this path?
Well, what happened was when you're getting med boarded out, they put you in a room for like a couple months every weekend or every whatever. And everybody around me, they're all playing checkers, they're all playing chess, playing cards. I did it for the first couple of times and I'm like, I can't do this. And I've always been addicted to knowledge. I've always been addicted to reading. I only have a 9th grade education, but I've read over 6,000 books. I think I got 18 books going now as we speak. So I picked up a couple books by the authors of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, Sharon Lechter. I've had them on the show. And then I started reading, stuff by Tony Robbins and self-help, and Gary Vaynerchuk's name kept coming up. And then I Googled him and I found out his dad's liquor store is 20 minutes from my house. So I actually called his dad and said, when's Gary going to be there? And I hooked up with Gary, talked to him for about a half hour. And he's the one that got me on this journey. So, and if you look at some of his early videos, my Wounded Warrior hat is actually hanging up. You can see it in the videos.
Huh.
So if it wasn't for Gary, and I always give him credit, him and Ed Milet, I give them credit for everything that I am now. So they got me started on the journey to trying to figure out, what do I do now? What am I good at? And when you lose 80% of your vision, there's not a whole hell of a lot that you can do or you're good at.
Sure. You meet Gary Vaynerchuk and you have that conversation with him. And is that where you decided to do the podcast, or was that you were kind of doing the podcast and Gary kind of got you pointing the right direction about your approach?
Well, I started dabbling in it because what happened was I was working with GNC at the time, and in the podcast, and I'll tell you the story because later. I mean, I'm the worst podcaster you'll ever meet. But I started a podcast because I work with GNC, so I would like try a brand new product, and I'd be like, product, tastes great, doesn't work, or I'd be like, this product is awesome, it tastes like ass, but probably the greatest product out there. So if you like it, come pick it up. So I started just trying different products. And then once I got hurt on duty, and then I'm like, what do I do now? Because I only got 20% vision. And somebody says, well, why don't you just push the podcast now? And with Anchor, I only did audio. So I didn't really have to do much. And it was just click record, get some guests. So it was very easy for me to do on Anchor. Now, I guess now it's Spotify. And we have almost 1,100 interviews on Spotify. So I love Spotify. Some people hate it. I like it.
Oh, very
but
nice.
And then Gary was. I think the book that Gary put out was at that time was the Thank You Economy. And I met him and we started talking, and that's when he's like, you need a story you need to tell your story. You need to get it out there. And that's when I started gobbling up everything that he ever written, everything he ever, whatever podcast he had on. Back then, I think it was Wine Library. And I just started sucking up everything, all the knowledge that I can get. So if it wasn't for him, like I said, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But I'm no Gary V. I can never be the kind of guy Gary V is. So I just consider him as a mentor. Him and John Lee Dumas. John Lee Dumas is actually my original mentor. And a lot of people don't know, when I had him on the show, that he was a tank commander in Iraq.
Huh.
and he actually lost a tank crew in Iraq. And after losing a tank crew, he was to the point of almost committing suicide. So, a lot of people say, oh, John Lee Dumas, top podcaster, but a lot of people don't realize that he was a tank commander in Iraq, and actually lost a whole crew got blown up by the Iraqis. And he was contemplating suicide at one point.
I don't know. I only met tankers once in the Marine Corps tankers. Army, I mean, I've met a bunch of them, but man, there is a lot of stuff out there now that can kill tanks pretty easily.
Yeah, it's and I mean, for me, when I was in, I was on the mine plow tank. That was my tank. But you don't realize, like, people that I've had on my show, like Sharon Lecter, everybody knows her from the Rich Dad Poor Dad series. But a lot of people don't know that she lost her son, Marine son, to suicide. So that was the common bond to have her come on the show. So everybody that I've had on the show is connected to the military or some way, or is going to teach the military how to get out of the military and start their own business and start their own company. So everything goes back to talking to military personnel.
So you're a military person, whether you're a, 04, I mean E3, excuse me, or an 04, and you're getting out and you have something for somebody to show them how to transition, what to do, and how to grow a successful business. I guess my first question would be is, what's the first thing someone should do, regardless of rank, when they get out?
They should have prepared a year before they got out. They should be getting on LinkedIn. They should start building community. They should start networking. But if you're just getting out, if you're Private Joe Snuffy, every person that I have on the show actually give pointers to what Joe Snuffy should do when they get out of the military. And the number one thing is if you can, not everybody can, but don't take a job right away, because you may take a job and it just sucks ass, and then you're just stuck in the minutia. So if you can get out and maybe even just take a week or two off and figure out, to decompress a little bit, and then find out, what do I love to do? What is my passion, and how can I make money off of it? Is it scalable? And then you find out who's the best at doing what they do, and start, learning from them. Like for me, it was Gary, and then it was Ed Milet, John Lee Dumas, Patrick Bet David. Those are my guys now. But you got to find out what you love, and then try to find a way you can make money off of it. And so that's what I would say is find a mission again. And the reason why I say that, because I found that if I talk to a veteran or a first responder, and if they start a podcast, or if they start a 501(c), a business, and they have a mission again, they're so much less likely to put the gun in their mouth and pull the trigger if they have a mission. Because when we get out, because like one of my friend Sergeant Nick talks about all the time, when we hit the streets, the military doesn't give a shit about you. Your phone stops ringing. You don't have the camaraderie. You don't have money coming in, and you don't have a mission. And then that's when the shit just hits the fan, and a lot of people end up looking at the bottom of a bottle or at the end of a gun. So for me, I would try to get in touch with somebody and try to find a mission again. If you can, not start work as soon as possible, try to go back to school, use everything the VA offers. The VA offers a lot of shit that a lot of people don't even use everything that the VA offers you. So, I would definitely talk to the guys at the VA and see they'll actually retrain you. They'll send you to school. They'll do all kinds of stuff. You just have to go in and say, what do you guys got? What can I do? Because a lot of people think, oh, I was in for 2 years. Yeah, but if you're in for 2 years, your hearing's probably shot. That's automatic 10%. Automatic. I mean, nobody gets denied for hearing. And then you're able to get all these different benefits, going to school, your VA loan for your house, And a lot of people don't think about that until they're older and like, huh, nobody ever told me I should go to the VA. And even if you get a 0% rating, you're still in the VA system, so you're still a veteran, so you're still able to get some of the benefits.
These benefits, like you said, can be hard to find, and it can be hard to understand what to do with them. How has your podcast pointed people in the right direction toward retraining, retooling, and taking advantage of those benefits that are out there?
Well, most of the people that I have on my show now, a lot of them are actors, authors, doctors, millionaires, billionaires, athletes. But we all struggle with the same shit, whether you're the CEO or whether you're the janitor. We all struggle with the same stuff. So my show is just, and my tagline is, we help people struggling in life and business, because, you know, we're all struggling with the same stuff. So my guy, you know, like I just had the director of The Sound of Freedom. He was on last, that's going to drop tomorrow. But, you know, he talked about how he struggled with his mental health, seeing all these kids being trafficked. So it all goes back to, you know, and the guy, when I sat down with John Lee Dumas to find my perfect avatar, we actually broke it down to, my perfect avatar is a 45-year-old male, father of 3, veteran, brand new business owner, and we named him Craig. So whenever I have a show, we're always talking to Craig. And the reason why we did that, because that was who I was 8 years ago. So now my perfect avatar is who I was 8 years ago and who I'm going to be 5 years from now.
God.
So you know, anybody, you can listen to any episode, and any veteran is going to get something, because it's built for you. It's built for veterans and first responders.
I was going to ask that. Is your show meant for veterans and first responders, or is it meant for, you know, a wider you know, audience?
Well, no, because what I do is, if I have somebody that comes on the show, like I had somebody come on the show, or no, they wanted to come on the show, and they were the dentist to all the stars in Beverly Hills. And I'm like, I don't know how I can put that for veterans. I don't know where that's going to fit in. So if you're just trying to hawk your products, I'm not the show for you. So if I have anybody on my show, it's going to be like, what value are you going to bring to Craig or his wife, Kathy? You know, what value are you bringing to veterans and first responders? So, you know, that's why I do, you know, because veterans are big wrestling fans. I mean, I got a lot of UFC fans. I've had Mick Foley, Randy Couture. You know, it has something. Everything has something to do with veterans.
Well,
you know,
let's go back to dental health for a second. I mean, flossing and oral health, man, is like a foundation of health. And there were a lot of people I served with who didn't understand that. A lot of people outside of the military that don't understand how important flossing is.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's a piece of string, but it is fighting the fight for you. It's like your M16, man. So
like I said, I was talking about, I asked him, I said, well, what kind of value do you want to bring to the veteran community? He's like, I'm just going to come in. I want to drop some names, like maybe Brad Pitt. And then I want to sell them on the product. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, just ain't going to happen.
Yeah. Understood. Sure. What do you like about podcasting?
Well, they call me the male Oprah, or they call me G.I. Joe Rogan. So I like to go deep. I like to get into people's stories. I mean, pretty much everybody comes on my show. We talk about emotional things. People cry. People talk about stuff that they weren't planning on talking about, because I make them feel at home. You know, Sure. It's just like, bro, it's just me and you sitting down with a cup of coffee. The camera's not there. It's just me and you. I mean, I have my friend Paul Aiken. He actually admitted the first time he was on my show that he was sexually molested by a priest for 10 years. He never told anybody.
Wow.
So, but he said, but now he's actually helping people go through that. I mean, help them go through it, because he was on my show and we talked about it. So for me, it's kind of like, I like it because I'm building relationships, because everybody I have on my show, they're all friends of mine now. Every one of them, they're all friends. They all get Christmas cards, birthday cards. I can get on the phone with an Iron Chef. I can get on the phone with Randy Couture. Now I become friends with everybody that's on my show. So it's kind of like building a big ecosystem. So I'm not the average podcaster, I guess.
Well, what is an average podcast? And the reason I ask that is there's a lot of people, a lot of veterans who want to start a podcast, and they see a show like yours and how successful it is, and they're like, well, I can do that in 6 months, or I can do that in a year. And that's not really the case, though, is it?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you consider successful. For me, if one person listens and they decide not to take their life, it's a successful podcast.
Sure.
But I mean, look at the facts. The average podcast lasts 13 episodes. It's called Pod Fade. There's 4 million podcasts out there, but only 400,000 have released an episode in the last 6 months. So people don't realize it's a lot of work to have, to build a successful podcast. It takes a lot of work, like you do, trying to get people on your show, trying to vet them. And then also once the episode comes out, then you got to do graphics. Then you have to do all this stuff. And people think, oh, I'm just going to flip the camera on. And it's like, no, that's not the way this works. I mean, Gary, when he first started out, he used a flip cam to do yard sales. But even him, when you see his stuff now, everything is kind of like Hormozy. When you see all his stuff now, everything is high class. It's high editing. So if you're going to start a podcast now, it's not as easy as it once was. So for me, to be an average podcast, I think you got to be willing to put in some serious work and time to make it a successful show.
So average is average, and I do agree. I mean, I got the numbers, from Spotify and Apple, and it goes from 4 million to 400,000 for 60 days of releases. But when you get into the people who are actually doing releases every week, that number shrinks to a very, very small number, extremely small number.
And then if you try to find somebody that does it every day, then you're like at like 1%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But let's just say, you're talking to me, I'm trying to start my podcast. I'm trying to start my show. You're telling me that I've got to put in the grind, put in the work. What are some best practices in your experience that, a person like me could do right out of the gate to make this somewhat easier?
And what I do is, like, I just launched a brand new course I call it the 3 Ps of podcasting. I teach, or for me, if me and you were getting together, I teach how to start a purposeful podcast, because you want to have purpose. And we go back to that mission again. And I teach how to have a powerful podcast, because you can have a podcast, if it's not quality, if it's not interesting or powerful, nobody's going to listen.
Right.
And then also I teach you how to be profitable, because nobody ever wants to go into a business and then 5 years later you're not making any money and you're putting out all the money out of your pocket. So those I call the three Ps of podcasting. So I tell everybody, the first thing you got to do is find who your perfect avatar is. Because if you don't know who your avatar is, you don't know where they shop, you don't know, are they male, are they female, what ages are they, that's why I lean very heavily on analytics. I'm a very big, and I've never been a numbers guy, but I look at my analytics every day. And if it changes by a point, I'm like, why did it change? How did it change? I know exactly who listens to my show, what age, what sex, what they listen to, where they shop. So I think before you would even start something like that, you want to find out who, what your perfect avatar is. Because like Jim Rohn said, if you're marketing to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. So for us, like you said, veterans are very, I think it's like only 2% of the population ever served in the military.
Yeah.
But it's 200,000 veterans get out of the military every year. So that's our niche. And, like Hormozy, I was talking to his guys, and he talks about how the riches are in the niches. So you need to find out, what your niche is going to be. And that's the most important thing, is to find out who your perfect avatar is and what your niche is going to be. Because if you just put out a podcast and talking to everybody, nobody's going to tune in, because how are you going to market to everybody? You
Right.
can't.
Right.
So for me and you, and I think we just got the list. I think last week our podcasts were like, I think there was At Ease Magazine. We're like in the top 27 podcasts, veteran podcasts. So,
Oh, wow. I got to check that out.
yeah.
How long have you been doing your podcast?
All right, you can make fun of me now, because I'm a low-tech redneck, and I tell everybody that. I actually had a podcast called Success Your Why Powers Your How. Now that ranked, I think we were in like the top 10 of veteran podcasts, until I realized I had 300 episodes. It was never on iTunes. After 300 episodes. So I called the guys at Apple, because I knew a friend that worked there, and he's like, there's no way we're going to be able to put 300 episodes on there. You got to start over again. It's like, so I had to start over from scratch.
Oh,
And I made sure that it was on iTunes and Apple. So I have 300 episodes that are on another podcast that I'm actually getting to. All those 300 people, 300 guests, I'm getting all to come on the new show. But I had 300 episodes without even realizing what iTunes was. So like I tell everybody, I was the worst podcaster ever.
were you like 2013, 14 when you started, 2012?
Now I think it's 5 years.
Okay.
So
Do you do it are you a weekly or everyday kind of podcast?
well, here's the problem.
Okay.
I had for the last year, my mother was sick, and we had to give her into a home. My dad passed, so I have 400 episodes that I have not even released yet.
Oh, wow.
And at Wednesday, I'm recording 6 more episodes. And I release episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So for me, I love the grind. I think I love just talking to people, and like I said, building relationships. So right now I'm in the process of hiring a VA, and they're going to be going to my YouTube channel, and because I got, I think, 800 videos on YouTube. So they're going to start putting everything together and starting to push them all out. So
Nice.
yeah, it's fun. It's a hobby for me, and I get to meet so many people. I was telling my cousin today, about 3 months ago, me and my wife, she was looking at something. She's like, man, I can't figure this. She was trying to figure something out about an onion. And she's like, I don't understand it. I don't get it. And I got on my phone, and I'm texting somebody, and I'm like, here's the answer. She's like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, that was one of the Iron Chefs from the network, from the Food Network. Here's the answer for you. She's like, wait a minute, how do you just reach out to an Iron Chef? I was like, because I built relationships, because he was on this show a couple of years ago, and he actually almost walked off a building. So he was suicidal. And that's how we bought the relationship. And that's how we started talking about veterans. So it's nice to have people that you could just, like, I know I can get on the phone and say, I don't know if you guys ever watched the movie Jerry Maguire.
Yes.
I had David Meltzer and Lee Steinberg on. So I could just reach out to David. I'm like, hey, bro, I need help. Even though he's got a $20 billion company, I know I could just reach out, and he'll be like, Rich, what do you need?
Nice.
Because we have platforms. We have a platform, me and you. So people love people with platforms.
You do this, and you when I say this, it's the whole aspect of podcasting, having your purpose, having your avatar, reaching people. Podcasting, though, we talked about it. There's so many of them out there. Do you ever feel like there's almost too many out there now? I have a lot of podcasters telling me that it's almost too easy to start one, and there's just so much chaff out there. It's hard to really stand out.
And then I also, when somebody brings that argument up to me, I talk to so many people like, oh man, I can't wait. I want to go start a YouTube channel. So wait a minute. There's like 5 million YouTube channels out there. And you want to compete with the YouTube channel when there's only 400,000 active podcasts. So you're going into a big C, and then you want to go into YouTube and get into an even bigger C. So I think for people that want to start a podcast, I tell them, if you're not ready to put in the work, don't even start it. Because but if you make it to episode 14, you're in the top 10% of all podcasts out there.
That's kind of weird to think about it that way, because I don't even think about it like that. But if you hit 14, you're an elite company.
Yeah, because the average podcast, I think it might be even a little bit lower. I think it might be 10, because everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to start a podcast, and they get a couple episodes in and they're hearing crickets. Nobody's listening. They're not making money. So they're like, yeah, I'm going to go on to something else. So I think be ready to put in work, be ready to get to that 14th episode. And you got, like I said, you got to be, even like, I'm a big sports guy. In order for, Tom Brady to be the greatest of all time, he started at Pee Wee football.
Yeah.
He put in 25 years. So even like Russell Brunson, I was talking to him, and he says, I did a podcast every day for 3 years before I started getting listeners. He said, sometimes I'd get 2 listeners a week because nobody was listening. He said, but I put in the work and I put in the effort. So if you want to be successful, like anything else, you got to put in the work, and you got to invest in courses, mentorships, books, listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm mentoring a guy right now. His podcast is dropping. We're going to starting January. And we started a podcast where he's actually going to teach veterans how to go through the MedPort process, what questions to ask, how to get their VA ratings. So, but I told him, I'm like, you're going to have to put in the work. And I asked him, I said, well, how many podcasts do you listen to? He's like, none. I'm like, so why would somebody listen to you talking on a podcast knowing you don't even listen to podcasts? So I said, that's what I told him. The first thing I did, I said, I want you to pick 5 podcasts. I don't care somebody in your niche. Ours is one of them. Whoever's in your military niche, pick 5 and make sure you're consuming them at the top ones, not the bottom ones, because then you're going to know what a good podcast sounds like.
Sure.
You're going to know what a good thumbnail looks like. You're going to know that you need to have scrolling on the bottom, because 80% of people don't have the sound on when they're on their YouTube. And a lot of people would never know that. But if you want to be successful and not get swiped up and listen and watch only 20% of the time, you got to do the stuff that successful people do.
Sure. And the technology's changed, right? Now it's so easy to do. It can lull you in the sense, well, I don't have to put out a lot of effort, but it's quite the opposite. To stand out, you've got to really be on your game, right?
Yeah, well, I listened because I actually edit all my own videos, and I went back because I'm starting to get in touch with the people the 300 that originally was on the old show. And I'm listening to my old shows back, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of a lot of uhs, and I'm like, oh, that sucked. But with I use StreamYard. I'm a big StreamYard guy, and they just put out to where I can stream now to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all at one time.
Yeah.
So if you use the technology right, and especially AI, I love AI, Chat GPT-4. But you have to put in the work to learn this. You have to put in the work to learn Zoom, how it works best for you. You can't just do willy-nilly and just flip the camera on. It don't work that way. Nobody's going to watch. They're just going to swipe. They're just going to watch.
How important is the aspect of sound? It might sound like a noob question, but the reason I ask is a lot of people will spend money on marketing and stuff like that, and they'll use, knockoff microphones. They got on, Amazon, and not really put a lot of effort into the sound part of their podcast. How much effort do you think someone should put into really trying to understand sound? Because it's difficult. Sound is something I'm still learning. There's so much I don't know, but I'd like to think that I've got some of the basics down pretty well.
And that's something that I teach. But the problem I think a lot of people have, they're like, oh man, I got to get my right microphone. I got my mic sitting right here. I got to get the right lighting. I got to get the right microphone. I got to get this. I got to get a soundproof room. And then they never do anything with it because it's paralysis by analysis. So even like for when I started, I only had an iPhone, and that's how I did all my editing. But I just recently, last Christmas, got a laptop. So I think you can start and then upgrade as you go. But I think if you start saying, well, I got to have this and I got to have this perfect, you're never going to start. So I think if you start, you can always upgrade. So I'd rather you start imperfectly and then move your way up instead of to wait for the perfect time, because then you're never going to do it.
Sure. What is next for you and, the Vertical Momentum podcast? And the reason I ask that is you put out a book, and that's due to your story that supported the podcast. You have the podcast now, you're doing podcast mentoring and teaching. But for the podcast itself, is there anything in particular with Vertical Momentum that is like your next stage of your journey, Richard?
Well, for me, my goal, and me and Gary's goal, we did a 5-year plan, and that was to hit 1 million downloads, and I think we're at like 1.5 million downloads right now. Now I can actually say, I want to go speak at the VA conferences. I want to go, throw my own mental health summit. So if I say, hey, I would love to have you come on the Vertical Momentum podcast, and the first thing I'm going to ask is, well, how many downloads you got? And then I say, oh, about 1.5 million. Then they're like, yeah, just sign me up. So for me, it's kind of like I want to make a big impact in this world. I want to, and it's not monetarily, because I realize I own nothing in this world. So even like we're talking about my t-shirts, my hat, I just got the new Scully, 100% of the proceeds or the profits go to help veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. So the more episodes I put out, it just means the more veterans I'm going to be able to help. So
Sure.
That's my whole goal with the podcast. It just, for somebody that says, you know what, Rich made it, I'm going to make it through another day, and it's okay not to be okay. So that's my goal my goal for this year or next year is to hit 2 million downloads, because that means I'm helping that many people.
Now, when you start playing the downloads number, though, I just want to ask, because I know people that play the downloads number, and then you get that message. I get them all the time every week on my emails saying, hey, I'm so and so and so and so. I can help you improve your download numbers. I had a gentleman come on and say, hey, I've analyzed your show. You pay me $2,000. I'll get you. And he broke it down by YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, what he could do for me. And a lot of people will cut the line and make that transaction and then sell it as if they've actually got the numbers. What's your thought on that? Because, on one hand, I get it. The numbers do give you legitimacy, but on the other hand, it's like you can't cheat the grind either.
Well, and I 100% agree. And one of the things I'll ask is, well, what are the people that are on your podcast? What do they say about you? Are they sharing your podcast episodes? Are they investing in you? What is their opinions when they get off your show? And if they're still staying in your ecosystem, that means you're doing something right. You're just not buying likes. You're just not buying followers. Because I always get asked that. I was like, yeah, well, you have so many. And I'm like, And they'd ask me, well, tell me about you. I'm like, I don't like talking about myself. And I tell everybody, I love this saying. I wish I had the t-shirt. I used to have it. It says, heroes don't talk. I mean, heroes talk about themselves, but legends get talked about. So I'd rather be talked about by other people, because then I'm not saying it. Like, I can say anything about me, but like, I had a message came through from Mr. Dean Graziosi. He says, I love your show, bro. Keep going. So if he says something about me, that's cool. But I can say anything about me, or pay to have downloads, or pay to get all this. If it's not real, people, you're going to get found out.
Yeah.
If you're not a real, like, people that know me, if you see my Facebook page, you know I'm real as hell. I am who I am. I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. So a lot of people will try to get me on their podcast and be like, oh, tell me about your military service. Tell me about all your, everything you've done. I'm like, I didn't do anything except get in trouble. So I'm not that guy. If you're looking for Navy SEAL, like, everybody's a Navy SEAL and everybody's a sniper now, or a paratroop, I'm like, I wasn't that guy. That was not me. So, I guess you just have to be honest. And, I mean, in order to get big, like Gary Vaynerchuk, he's paying over $30,000 a month to get his podcast promoted. That's why he can put out 400 pieces of content a week. So, I mean, it's okay if you are paying to get, for promotion, because like who would ever put out a Marvel movie? Who would ever know about it if there was no promotion?
Oh, well, yeah. And to me, promotion's different than buying likes, follows, or views or listens, right?
Yeah.
I totally understand that. But he also says something else that I'm trying to get my head around, that, I'm watching him and he's like, the biggest thing that you need to do as a, creator is put out 8 pieces of content a day per platform. And I am like, wait a minute, maybe I could do 8 pieces across all of them. But if I heard him right, he was serious. Like, you should have 8 pieces, almost 1.5 hour going out to everything. And I'm like, that's a full-time job.
Yeah.
That's a full-time job. And I don't know about, I work full-time, so I don't know how you make the time to get to that level unless you're spreading the load across other people you employ.
Yeah. Like for me, I'm listening to, like I said, I'm always learning. So I'm actually listening to a book by Dan Kennedy. And he talks about, you should only be posting once a day on Facebook. And then you get Gary, says you need to be posting 8 times a day. So I guess it all depends on your goals and if you have the money to spend. Like, for when I started, I didn't have any money and I didn't know how. I had no connections.
Yeah.
So I think we're at like 30,000 connections on LinkedIn, and I don't even look for guests anymore. Now people send me all guests, but I had to put in 5 years of time. And I still, I have a scare. This is my full-time job. I don't do anything else. So this is my full-time job. So I'm not the guy to be asking for somebody that does have a full-time job.
Well, I got a full-time job, Richard. I got a full-time job. So there's only so much juice in the turnip. So, and this is the thing a lot of podcasters get exposed to, and then they get frustrated and then they quit. And it's hard understanding who's being real or not. I guess my other thing is, if you're going to promote, do you pay for boosting? I had somebody else saying, hey, you might need to think about getting a budget amount per month on Facebook and pay for boosting all your show posts to help the algorithm out.
You know what how much it cost me to boost on Facebook? Because I have my friend Dennis Yu. He came on the show. He's a great, if you ever guys ever want to find out about how to kick the algorithm into super gear, a guy named Dennis Yu, last name is YU. He actually helped start Google. He was one of the guys that worked behind the scenes at Google. And it cost me $1 a day to promote my podcast on Facebook. I use the $1 a day to post my podcast. That's it. So guys, $30 a month. Come on, you can't go to McDonald's with the kids for $30. So a lot of people say, I can't afford it. I'm like, for $1 a day, you can afford to boost a post.
Well, I mean, for me, I think that's where I'm like telling people, hey, forget this fancy merchandise and all that, right? Pay for the boosting, because Facebook used to be very like open, and they've locked it down. It's free, but do you think it's really free anymore, Richard?
No, it's not. But like I also, like I said, I take a lot of classes. I'm actually taking another course with Dan Kennedy right now, and a lot of people they put stuff on social media, but they're working against the algorithm instead of working with the algorithm. And I think there's a big difference to say, okay, what does Facebook want? What is their goal? Their goal is to have you stay on the platform as long as possible. So if you're putting links in, they're going to bury everything you do if you're putting links in, because they want you to stay on it. It's kind of like having a girlfriend and she's going out every night. You're not going to keep her. Same thing with Facebook, or it's like Instagram. They're going to reels now. They're going to videos. But if you put on Instagram, if you do a reel that has TikTok on it, they're going to bury it.
Yep.
So it's all about learning how to work the algorithms and which platforms are best for you. I'm big on Pinterest. I think we have like 12,000 downloads a month on Pinterest.
Well, the crafting social media platform.
Yeah. I don't know how. I don't know why. But the thing about, and I'm going to drop a little nugget on here, that if you put a post on Facebook and you boost it, after whatever the boosting time is, it's over. You're never going to see it again. If you put a post out on YouTube or Pinterest, it lives there forever. So a lot of people, well, why would you be on Pinterest? I'm like, I don't know, but people are still finding it. Stuff I put out 5 years ago, people are still finding it and sharing it. So you got to make sure that you're going to go on YouTube or somewhere where your stuff is always going to be found. Because I'm still making money from stuff I sold 6 years ago. I still got money coming in from episodes from 5 or 6 years ago.
Nice.
So you just have to figure out, you want to work with all the algorithms, and every platform has a different reason.
Sure.
You can't just copy and paste the same picture on 8 different platforms. It's not going to work.
No. So you got a veteran wanting to start a podcast. You have people that want to listen to your podcast and read your books. How do they get connected to you and what you do and how you do it?
Well, if they want to get connected with me, we are on the first 6 pages of Google. So all you put in Vertical Momentum Podcast. I think we're on 24 different social media platforms right now. And that's like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Tumblr, Flickr. We're on all kinds of crap. Pinterest, TikTok. So if you can't find me, all you put in is Vertical Momentum. I'm going to show up somewhere in your news feed. So, and I'm going to offer something to your listeners. I'm also going to, if somebody direct messages you or me, I'll actually send them my book for free.
Oh, very nice.
No charge. And if somebody's looking to start a podcast, I'll give them 30 minutes of my time, all for free, no strings attached, just because they're your listener.
Well, appreciate that. Thank you.
That's how we do, right?
Absolutely. Well, Richard, I mean, time flies, and I've had a great time getting to talk with you and learn so much. And, I think it's great, folks, because, it's kind of like, Chevy and Ford, but we're driving the same load, Richard and I, and a lot of things he's telling you is what I would tell you about starting your podcast. He just says it differently, but in a very, impactful way. So I really appreciate you sharing so candidly and openly, because I don't know about you. I just like, it's not going to happen overnight with no work. It's just not going to happen. Please listen to me. It's just not going to happen. So it was kind of cool to hear you articulate it in your way. So,
well, Travis, now I'm going to put you on the spot because I want you to come on my show and I want to feature you on my show.
I'm not that interesting, Richard. I really am not. I'm not. I'll
Bro,
come on your show.
I love just sitting here talking to you.
Well, I mean, I'll come on your show. Absolutely. We agreed to trade shows.
Yes.
So I'm next. I did say that. So yeah, I'm coming on.
We're going to put you there.
All right. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Richard Kaufman, U.S. Army veteran, podcaster of the Vertical Momentum podcast. He's an author. I'll have the links to his book, his podcast, and everything about him in Oscar Mike Radio show posts. Hey, Richard, I want to thank you for coming on. And, it's always good to have somebody who understands the journey, the grind, the purpose of what you're doing. So I appreciate it, and can't wait to come on your show.
I love it. And by the way, I love your background. I love your graphics. You're tight and on point.
Well, thank you very much. Worked very hard on that, and it just took a lot of trial and error to get there, but I really like this one. It's me all the way.
Can I just say something to your audience real quick?
Sure.
Guys, if you're watching this, make sure that you subscribe and leave a written review on iTunes, because for every one written review, it's equal to 10 5-star clicks. So make sure you leave a written review for this show, and make sure you subscribe and share to show he's doing this all this for you, so that you can do for him, and it's all free.
Oh, I ask, it's something to ask for that. A lot of people don't click the like or subscribe button anymore. It's hard to get that to happen. You know how that is, but I appreciate everybody who does like, share, and subscribe. And those are special people to me. Absolutely. So until I can come on your podcast, folks, enjoy your time. Richard, thank you again. As we say in Oscar Mike Radio, we are mission in flight.
Remember, Honor teaches our mission. We care about it. We do it every day. But I think there are things that just hit you and give you a reason to go on. The theme for our 2024 for Reach Across America is Live with Purpose. It just seemed to fit in with the vows of the REAP, the 10 attributes that we feel represent our United States military. I thought, what a great opportunity to put those two things together and show our kids through how we act some of the things that can make their lives better, their communities better, and by doing that, the country better. For me, Live with Purpose, I think, it's a mindset. Set some guidelines and then go out and purposefully make life different, make a change. It's an opportunity to set an example.
Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action and the mission is in flight. Oscar Mike Radio is an oversized load Co-Sinister One production. If you are a veteran or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 988 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.